Welcome. My name is Sarah Donnelly. You are joining us on the Volusia County Uncovered podcast. As always, it is more than a pleasure to be here with my co-host, Lori Becker.
Hello, Sarah. I'm awesome. Refreshed, coming back from a little bit of a vacation.
You went to what they call the City of Water, Venice, Italy.
Well, yeah, it was a pleasure trip, obviously, but I have to say that there were a lot of similarities to what Venice is going through with the flooding. And so I realized as I was walking through the city, which is prepared for that high tide that can come on a regular basis, I was like, wow, this is very comparable to what we're dealing with here in our local area. And the grim scenario is that Venice will be one of the first cities in the world to succumb to this rising sea level. And scientists say that Venice will become the new Atlantis. And that's like crazy to think about that. But then there's that best case scenario, which Venice becomes part of a world laboratory, basically, to think about climate change and the solutions. But when I'm walking through the streets of Venice and I see how the stormwater system works there, it's so simple. It's literally grates in the middle of the street and the water just drops right into the lagoon. And so, you know, their technical solutions are very, very basic, you know, because the flooding's been going back since the 8th century. So, yeah, we all know that Venice is built on a lagoon. We know that it's built on pilings, and it's sinking. Venice is sinking 1 millimeter a year. And so the city had to come up with this big system. What are we going to do? Are we going to lose Venice, or are we going to do something great to try and save it?
That system is called the MOSE system. It's a futuristic and experimental approach. These gates rise as the lagoon rises.
It's crazy. I looked for that, but I couldn't find it because clearly it's all underwater. They do have stuff on, you can see on documentaries on TV about that, but it's like this $1 billion program that they finally put into play like in 2024, and apparently it's working.
Well, I think you really resonated with Venice while you were gone because it's a city that's facing rising waters and a dependence on the government, but yet they're fighting back with such resiliency.
Yeah, it definitely is resiliency, and it's possible to sort of apply that same concept in the United States because it is very relevant now for what we're dealing with in low-lying areas. But you don't want to be that canary in the coal mine, okay? And that has been a statement that some scientists have said that they believe that if we don't do something about this, like mitigation, quickly, you know, you're going to be caught. You're going to be that canary caught in the coal mine. So again, Venice is a big experiment right now for how we're going to save the rest of the world. And we're not just talking about, you know, yeah, it does relate to climate change, not really something that we're going to get heavy into on this show, but they are dealing with it and trying to be as resilient as possible by walking around in their little boots. You know, every restaurant we went into had these high boots, and they have these plastic things that cover your pants that you can buy in the street. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. We would never be doing that around here.
I think this canary in the coal mine really relates to us here in Volusia County because we are a coastal, low-lying city. And it can really teach us a lesson that if we collectively continue to ignore stormwater planning and keep approving overdevelopment and growth in the area, we could very easily be next in line.
Right. So you have to consider that most of the global population lives within, 100 miles of the coastline. And so this is something that is relevant and not just for a place like Venice. So with so many people living near the coast, this is a much wider issue, and this is by no means a local problem. And so our local problem, hopefully, is going to get some relief with this state budget that was approved in Tallahassee around July 1st.
Yeah, $42 million was secured for District 30. Port Orange had a huge win. Although Governor DeSantis vetoed nearly $600 million in state appropriation, Port Orange received $3.5 million from the state of Florida for the Madeline-Pepperhill Stormwater Project.
Right, and there's a match to that.
Yeah, another $3.5 million local match. So we're playing now with about $6 to $7 million that we have to get this project off of the ground.
Right, and then wasn't there something something in there about Ponce Inlet as well.
The funding, about $1.4 million, will go to a Ponce Inlet master lift station. The infrastructure repairs for the system that is over 35 years old,
right.
Hoping to lessen the flooding in surrounding neighborhoods and areas.
Right. I mean, Ponce Inlet kind of reminds me of that situation with Venice. You know, it's a peninsula, and they are losing ground every year. So they do need to get control of that flooding. If the stormwater lift station helps, I hope so.
Yeah, well, this was no easy feat. It really takes a lot of effort and coordination to secure funding like this. And this is by far the largest piece of the pie that Volusia County has ever been awarded, based on the mitigation efforts that the city is putting up.
Right. And so we do have to give a lot of credit to Chase Tremont and Florida Senator Tom Wright, for their sponsorship and support to go up there and get us, all the way to the finish line and secure all that funding. And, of course, the city leaders in Port Orange put a big package together, their stormwater plan. A lot of people just are not seeing that they really are working hard to try and get a stormwater plan together, not just in Port Orange, but in all the other surrounding cities, that we each have our problems. Yeah, Port Orange is at the bottom of the funnel. We all know that. But there's other areas that are not getting funded still, because there were like 9 projects on that stormwater plan. And so some of those other communities are...
like Sleepy Hollow, Foxborough. There's apartments off Jackson Street in between Madeline and Herbert.
Right. I think Sweetwater is also a big fishbowl down there. Of course, the Leisure Villas and that whole Cambridge Basin deal. I'm not really sure where the funding from the state comes in with that, but I believe those plans have been in play for a long time.
We've seen neighborhoods such as Tomoka Farms Village really come together. They actually codified their community
so that the rural boundary is sustained. And what a great group that is, the Tomoka Farms Village group. They got together, they made a coalition, like 50 people showed up for their first meeting, and they said, look, we are not going to allow commercial development in here. We want to maintain our rural way of life out here. And so they went to the county and were able to get this codified agreement going.
Really smart move, because by establishing the rural boundary in their community, they were able to separate the urbanized areas, which limits development and density that's allowed within those boundaries.
Yeah, and they were successful. And that is just a real victory for the residents out there. And I'm really glad to see it too, because, you love that area out there. I love driving on 415 and seeing those communities still look like the country out there. And then you have the situation, because at the last city commission meeting, they voted on the second reading to annex in those 58 acres for vintage farms. And there were at least 20 residents from Spruce Creek Fly-In, the village, that showed up and gave their testimony as to why they should not be building that Cross Creek area and the Vintage Acres area that's going to tie into the back of that.
Vintage Acres was recently annexed into Port Orange. The idea there is to potentially build a 113-home subdivision that would sit on 58 acres. The development is not yet approved. However, this does tie into the Creek Crossing project, and residents are not happy about it.
Well, they're not happy because they've had this awesome area out there. The Spruce Creek is out there, and they've had plenty of room between the both developments, and now right through that swath of land, if you look at it on a map, you're going to be seeing hundreds of homes out there. And
per that city commission meeting, we do know that the reason the city wanted to annex Vintage Acres is because they quote unquote wanted a seat at the table to be able to lower the density in this area.
Yeah. I hope so. I think if the county had it, they said that it could be 1 house per 4 acres. Maybe we're going to hope for one house per 8 acres. Because the whole idea is, because there was a lady named Jan Albert who stepped up and gave a great talk about the geo factor out there and how we need to preserve the land, and that for every acre of land that remains untouched is 1 million gallons of water that has a place to go. And so that is so important that we continue to speak about that, about protecting the land.
And it's so important that we have people like Jan Albert that are willing to do the research. And Tomoka Farms Village does a great job at putting on quarterly meetings. They're very informative, very glad to be a part of that, learned a lot from that meeting.
Yeah, one of the things that I was taken back by was there was representatives from Morgan and Morgan there, and they talked about the Miller Lake lawsuit over in Deltona and how that is happening right now. A group of people got together and they did their homework, and they're going to prove that all of the building that was going on around them has caused their community, their development to flood. And so that was a really big deal to see a big representative from Morgan and Morgan come and talk about that.
And so we are seeing a rise up in communities, although there are some communities that are still left on the outskirts. We are really seeing people come together and fighting for mitigation.
And so, that all kind of rolls into that Slow the Growth, slowthegrowth.com, which was started by Brian White. I think he's going for a position in county council for District 3. And he's steamrolling on this. This is really becoming a big coalition in Volusia County, and we need more of that. And it is still about flooding. Yes, we don't want to see our trees, come down and more developments put in, but we have to maintain our wetlands.
Yeah, I think it's so awesome that Brian has taken the approach of trying to fight against this urban sprawl that not only are we seeing in our city, we're seeing that all over the state of Florida. Urban sprawl really has an effect on our daily lives. It drives up taxes, it causes dangerous flooding, it harms ecosystems, and these are all the things that the people that live in Florida and our communities are trying to preserve.
Well, you can't stop the growth. Developers are going to win, but we can slow the growth. And so one of the things that comes to mind is the Deltona moratorium that was posted the other day. Wow. Deltona got on board and said, we are going to put a moratorium on development for, I'm not exactly sure if it was commercial development or developments for houses. It's still early and coming around. This was just posted recently. But how about that? How about Deltona? And how about the opposite of that? How about what happened in Bunnell? That was crazy. They filled that room with people. They were going to put in, kind of like the Latitudes, in Daytona. A Hawk Creek was going to have 8,000 homes. We're talking about, that is a rural community out there that cannot handle the infrastructure for cars traveling in and out of there. And they were going to put 8,000 homes. And so that night at the meeting, they voted it out. Okay. And then all of a sudden, there was a reversal of that at another meeting, at the end of the meeting.
Right, and so this is why we encourage residents not only to show up to these meetings, but to stay until the end of the meeting.
Stay until the end of the meeting, yes, because at the end of the meeting is when that was brought up and they were able to get that.
With no agenda item.
Wow. No agenda. Well, Morgan and Morgan, here we go again. So hopefully that community continues to rise up because we have got to slow the growth. There is no doubt about it, because just look what's happening in our little Port Orange area. Do you think that we can handle all of that traffic on Taylor Road going out toward Tomoka Farms Road? Where are these cars going to go that are going into this Cross Creek Vintage Acres area? They wanted to put it right through Quiet Place in the Country, and they changed that. So let's get the infrastructure ready before we start this mass building going on.
Yeah, Slow the Growth really is a pro-community movement.
That's just some of what's going on right now in Volusia County. And so if we go back to Sugar Forest, Pepperhill area, there's a lot of homes in there, as well as a few around that are still waiting on the Elevate Florida program.
And Elevate Florida, let's remind everybody, that is a program through the Florida Department of Emergency Management. There's a little bit of skepticism as to whether this program really will take off. Right now, the funding seems to feel like a waiting game. People are still waiting on timelines, waiting on support, waiting on answers.
Waiting on emails specifically. I'm in that bracket. I applied for that. But I really feel that the waiting game is real, because if the state approves to give us this money to fix the infrastructure, meaning that dig the pond at Pepperhill, put down 8,000 feet of pipe that's going to take some of the overload from the Nova Canal, if we're going to spend all that money on that, why do we need to elevate? Right? That's a big question. Why would we need to elevate? Now, there are some homes that were a disaster from Milton. I know one home for sure in Brandy Hills that literally the foundation cracked in half. And so the house had to be condemned, demolished. And so Elevate Florida is rebuilding that home. So that is a success story. But those are desperate, situations with people have to do something. Florida Department of Emergency Management had to do something about that, because that lake that's right in front of that woman's home flooded terribly and just took the house down.
Well, I think what we're seeing is a slow burn, and when it comes to these state processes, it really can be a timely process. But when you're living in your home and you're facing the mitigation efforts, you don't have time.
Right, and we still don't have time. Come on, they're talking about maybe 2026, which actually moves the timeline up for that community, for fixing the flood for 500 homes, possibly the start of the plan, 2026. Now, we can't really take those timelines seriously, but they did move it up.
And let's remind people, too, what the Madeline-Pepperhill Stormwater Project is. That is 8,000 feet of pipe that will sift through the city and lead out into the Halifax River. So This is a huge project that's going to take years to complete.
Yeah, and I think you're going to obviously have to have a bigger chunk of money for that.
The project was slated to cost over $30 million, and we've only received about $7 million.
Yeah, there are other pots where the money's going to come from, but yeah, it's going to be a while. I think they're going to dig the pond first, but I'm anxious to see how that moves along. But in the meantime, everyone that sat at that meeting, because, they did these meetings, for different communities. They did Sugar Forest, and then they did Sleepy Hollow.
Public input.
Yeah, the public input meetings. And so, the timeline legit is 27, 28 for full recovery of that area. So we still have to work on household mitigation plans. And so me personally, I finished my my gutter project and my French drain project, and there's many other things that people need to be doing. And so I think it's important for communities maybe to get together and have neighborhood meetings on this, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while, is just get, Colony in the Wood is one, for instance. They've got a plan. They want to talk about it. They want to get more serious about it. And so does all these other areas.
A prime example of communities coming together again would be, I think, Tomoka Farms Village that we've seen.
Right. I'm sure that they're going to be talking about mitigation in their area. But again, we're talking years till this is going to come around. There's already 20 houses for sale in the Sugar Forest area, and these people have nowhere to go without losing $100,000 or more on their property. So let's do what we can to try and mitigate. And of course, that means spending money. Okay, I know someone who I recommended the Dam Easy to, which is like a big dam that goes around the house, and she bought the whole program, and she's making sure that.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is like the next frontier when it comes to getting your household ready. Either way, there has to be some level of preparedness that goes into hurricane season.
Yeah, it's not just, you got to make a decision, you got to make a plan. Are you going to shelter in place, or are you going to evacuate? It's one of the two. And if you are going to shelter in place, you better get your furniture up now, because we've all lost our furniture once already.
Make sure you have supplies, make sure you have food, medication, water, things like that.
Right. And Generacs, if you can afford it, and just generators in general. We've got to get ready. I just want to really emphasize that. And so FloridaDisaster.org has a really good site that has a very clear plan of some things that people can follow. So let's just hope that we can, I hate to say it, we have to learn from the past, but I don't want to be that canary. I'm not going to be a canary. I'm not going to get caught. not doing my due diligence of preparing my home and myself.
I really like that you bring up floridadisaster.org. Aside from that, there's a lot of community resources here in the county.
VRRC, yeah. It's called Volusia Response Recovery Corps, and the county is putting together kind of a team of people. And there's already like 75 people that have signed up for that. So if you're interested in being part of the solution, or part of the plan for helping people to go into recovery, I highly recommend that you go to the Volusia Readiness Response Corps online. There is a link there, and apply. And bring us whatever resources you can to the table, expertise, whatnot. I'm a member of that as well. And I just want to really encourage people to get involved in their cities to try and be part of the solution.
Over the past month, we've really seen that with all the meetings and things that we've showed up to. There really is a sense of camaraderie among this city, which is just beautiful to see. And there's so many ways to get involved. I think on this cast, we will always push, show up to your city council meetings, find out what the potential politicians'
plans are, for the future, and make sure that we hold their feet to the fire and that they follow through.
Absolutely.
They have to follow through.
Absolutely.
And we, as residents of this community, have to follow through. We have to have plans, and we have to take care of ourselves so that we can be resilient like the people of Venice.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you so much, Lori, for joining me today.
So much to talk about and catch up for so many months. And I hope that our next podcast is not going to involve a storm that we've experienced.
We will pray for the best. And as always, we want to give a huge shout out to Alec Ferguson with Beachside Productions.
Absolutely.
He does a great job at producing our show. So shout out to you, Alec.
Yay, Alec.
And thank you for joining us.
Okay. All right. Take care.